Good evening, everyone, and welcome to MEFA's College Financing webinar. Tonight, we have a wonderful presenter, Ryan Forsythe, who is the Vice President for Enrollment at Worcester State University. And he'll be presenting all of this great college financing information to you this evening. I will just tell you about a few logistics. We are recording this webinar. So tomorrow we will send you the recording and the slides. So you'll have those, so you don't have to take too many notes this evening. And then if you would like to ask questions, we welcome those questions. And Ryan would love to hear from all of you, hear your questions. Why don't you put them in the question and answer section at the bottom of your screen? That's the best way we can keep track of them. And we'll make sure to answer them, if not during the presentation, near the end. And if you need closed captioning, there's also that option on the bottom of the screen. You can just press live transcript and you'll be able to see the words that are spoken. I guess if we go to the next slide, Ryan, I'll just say a couple of words about MEFA. And I think it's the next one after this. That just for those of you who don't know MEFA well, we've been around since 1982. And we have the same mission, which is helping families plan, save, and pay for college. And we have the Massachusetts College Savings Plans. We also have low-cost loans for families that need that type of financing. And then everything else we do is free guidance for families at whatever stage you and your students are at toward the college process. And so a lot of the way we deliver information is through webinars like this. So return often to mefa.org/events. And there's a lot of information for you. And with that, Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Forsythe. I am the Vice President for Enrollment at Worcester State University. That is my day job. But like many of you, I have been doing my day job at home. And today I got to do my day job at home on day 9 of the stay-at-home order for my 3 young children whose school has closed because of COVID. I suspect maybe some of you have been experiencing that over the past 18 or 20 months. And today my children decided to make cement in the kitchen sink. So this is really the best opportunity for me to decompress and enjoy my evening with you all while we talk about college financing. I am not affiliated with MEFA today. I am a volunteer that is here to share information with you about the topics that you see here on the screen. Tonight's session is about financing a college education, and that is complicated and it can be scary. But tonight is about helping you learn all of the information that we in higher education and through MEFA have for you so that we can lessen that concern and keep you informed so you can make the best decisions for yourself or for your student as it relates to investing in a college education. So tonight we will talk about the different kinds of financial aid that are out there. We'll talk about the process to apply for financial aid and how those financial aid decisions are made. How is a financial aid package put together, for instance? We'll also talk about how to pay for college, the entire cost of college, even if financial aid doesn't cover that whole cost. And we'll certainly, close to the end of our presentation, share some free resources with you, some opportunities that exist at no cost to help you make a college education more affordable. But we're going to start with those kinds of financial aid, the types of financial aid and where the financial aid comes from first. First, we need to know that there are 3 main kinds of financial aid. The first is what we sometimes called gift aid. This is grants and scholarships. Grants and scholarships are a form of financial aid that are given to a student to help them pay for college, and they do not have to be paid back. Whereas federal student loans and other kinds of loans are a form of financial aid that do need to be repaid. We'll talk a lot about these different kinds of financial aid, especially student loans, as we go through the presentation tonight. The third kind of financial aid is work study. Many of you have heard of work study. It is a kind of financial aid that allows a student to work on campus and usually receive a paycheck, possibly a weekly or bi-weekly paycheck. In some rare cases, campuses will let students use that work to pay down their student bill, but it's more common for students to receive an actual paycheck, a check that they can cash, and then use that funding to either pay for their schooling directly or pay for the ancillary costs that come with college, such as books and supplies and pizza. So where does all that financial aid come from? Well, we are in, of course, the state of Massachusetts, in the United States, and in our country and in our state, some of our tax dollars are used to pay for financial aid, either from the federal government or from the state government. So you see in the top left-hand corner of the screen here that a lot of our financial aid comes from the federal government. Some of those grants that we talked about earlier that are free money that do not need to be repaid come directly from the federal government. The Pell Grant, for instance, is a very popular, very common form of financial aid that is a grant from the federal government. Work Study, that program that allows students to work on campus and receive a paycheck, comes from the federal government, as well as most of the student loans. Many of the student loans that are available to students in the United States are lent and serviced by the federal government. These are typically called direct student loans, as well as Parent Plus loans, and we'll talk about those as we go through the evening. The federal government also offers a number of tax incentives. These are incentives that are built into your taxes, and you claim them usually during the time of completing your taxes that are based on a college enrollment, such as the tuition that you pay or the student loan interest that you pay. Information about all of these different forms of federal financial aid is available online at studentaid.gov. In Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts also offers a number of different forms of financial aid, again, including grants and scholarships that don't need to be repaid. A small number of tuition waivers. These tuition waivers could be based on your qualifications as a state employee or as an employee that has a disability. The state of Massachusetts may offer a tuition waiver, for instance, to a public university to you if you qualify for one. Additionally, the state of Massachusetts offers a small category of loans. And all of these forms of financial aid are run through the Massachusetts Office of Student Financial Aid. And you see their website right there in the blue box, mass.edu/OSFA. Now, some financial aid can come directly from your college. When a student receives a large scholarship, perhaps for athletic ability or for academic merit, these scholarships typically are coming from a college or a university that a student is attending. Colleges can offer grants as well, and in some cases, loans. And these forms of financial aid are specific to the college, where federal or state financial aid can sometimes be brought to different colleges. College or university financial aid typically stays at the college from which it's awarded. So a student receiving the Holy Cross Scholarship can't use the Holy Cross Scholarship at Babson College. They have to use it at the college from which it's been offered. And then last but not least is a catch-all category of other agencies from which financial aid is available. For the greatest example of this is scholarships. Scholarships are available from many different sources. High schools offer scholarships. Local Lions clubs offer scholarships. The local American Legion in your town or the library might offer scholarships. Also, there's large-scale scholarships that are available from nationwide companies or Fortune 500 companies. Nike offers scholarships. Walmart offers scholarships. All of these scholarships are available from different sources and can be found through different sources. But we want to share with you the two websites that are right there on your screen in the red box, because those two websites are trusted sources of scholarship information. If you or I went onto Google right now, we could type in scholarships and millions of results will come up. Some of them will be reputable, some of them will not. But these websites that we've provided for you here in the red box, MEFApathways.org and fastweb.com, these are two sources where we know that the scholarships have been vetted and they're safe for you to provide information in order to apply for those scholarships. I'll take a moment here to share that when applying for scholarships, you should not feel obligated to provide personally identifiable information, things such as social security numbers or dates of birth. These forms of PII, personally identifiable information, are a little bit too far for a scholarship. A scholarship may want to know what you're interested in studying, A scholarship application may ask you for where you're going to go to college or what your GPA in high school was. All of those are very much within bounds. Those are the things that scholarship agencies make their decisions upon. But if a scholarship is asking you for a social security number or asking you to pay $50 or $75 to apply for the scholarship, that's probably a less than reputable scholarship, and you should be looking at it with a very critical eye. I said that we would be talking about student loans tonight. The reason that we spend a good amount of time on student loans during this presentation is that student loans make up a large portion of the financial aid picture and the picture of how many families make a college education affordable in the United States. If we were in a different country, in Europe or specifically in Germany, we wouldn't be talking as much about loans. We might be talking more about federal or grants or scholarships. But here in the United States, the amount of grants and scholarships that are typically available through the federal or state governments only cover a portion of a college education. The remainder of the cost of that education must be borne by the student or by the student's family. Now, we know that a college education is an investment in oneself. With a college education, more doors are opened. More opportunity for employment exists. Lower unemployment is likely. Higher wages, higher rates of pay are likely. But in order to get there, in order to get to that opportunity, the college education is often the ticket. And so students will make that college education affordable by borrowing a student loan to pay the bill today, and then paying off that student loan after the student has sought and acquired gainful employment. One of the largest loan programs that its students use to make a college education affordable is the Federal Direct Student Loan Program. In this program, the federal government is the lender of the loan. It's not Bank of America or Chase or Sallie Mae. It's the federal government. The federal government also will hire an agency to service the loan after the student gets out of college. So the federal government will collect the loan through the servicer and will not do so through a bank. Now, in these loans, the student is the sole borrower. Now, if you think about a student and their likelihood for borrowing a loan, most students that attend college are between 17 and 25, 26, 27 years old. Most students in that category are not eligible for loans by walking into a bank or a credit union because of a lack of credit history. But with the Federal Direct Loan Program, students are eligible for these loans without a credit check, as long as they are attending an eligible college or university, typically a United States college or university that's eligible for Title IV financial aid. These forms of financial aid, again, are loans. They must be repaid, and loans typically come with interest. Where you see on the right side of your screen, a freshman may borrow $5,500 to pay for part of their freshman year. That loan will amortize over time, and interest will capitalize on that loan. Meaning, with a fixed interest rate of 3.73% this year, that freshman loan may be closer to $6,500 by the time the student is paying off that loan after graduation. In some cases, loans are provided without interest. These are called subsidized loans. An unsubsidized loan is a loan that capitalizes interest at a normal rate based on whatever the interest rate is at that time. However, with subsidized loans, because some students have a financial neediness that requires them to allows them to receive a loan with no interest, they can receive a subsidized loan that has 0% interest while the student is in school. Now, when the student leaves school, that interest begins to capitalize, and the student has the option to pay down their principal and interest after they leave school. The nice thing about these loans, and the reason that many college students do employ them, is because there are no payments while the student is enrolled. That's not typical for another type of loan. If you or I were to walk into a bank or a credit union now and ask for a form of loan, a personal loan or a car loan or a mortgage, we would be expected to begin paying that loan back in very short order, perhaps within a month or a couple of months. With student loans, the federal direct student loans, repayment is delayed until after the student leaves college. That could be after they graduate college, after they withdraw from college, or if they're going on for further education, such as a master's degree or a doctoral degree, the payment on that loan is delayed until after they are completed with all of their education. There are numerous ways to pay back these student loans, And there's a lot going on right now nationwide with changes to repayment plans on the federal level, as well as opportunities for public servants to have some of these student loans paid for them because of their service to a public or nonprofit agency. You see some examples on the screen here of how a student loan that is approximately $27,000 would result in approximately a $300 payment over the course of 10 years, paying back a total of $32,000 to $34,000. This is a loan that typically has this lower interest rate. 3.73 is a relatively low interest rate. And there are a few lending options where the interest could be much lower, such as home equity or other borrowing. Now let's shift gears a little bit. We're not going to talk about student loans. We're going to talk about merit-based forms of financial aid. Merit-based aid is exactly what it sounds like. It is a form of financial assistance that is based on a meritorious characteristic that you or your student has. You've heard of students receiving scholarships for high GPAs or high test scores. You've heard of students receiving scholarships because they can be the star musical instrument player within a band. These are all forms of merit-based aid. They're awarded based on some type of achievement that your student has participated in and achieved over the course of their life prior to entering their college. Very often, these forms of merit-based aid are renewable, which means a student can carry them from their first to second, perhaps even to third or fourth academic year. That's not always the case, and so you want to pay real close attention. If a college offers you a merit-based form of financial aid, you want to make sure that you understand the details as to whether or not it will be renewable and whether or not it's renewable at the full rate. Perhaps there may be something that a student must need to do in order to renew the scholarship, such as complete their courses in their first or second year of college with a certain GPA. Typically, applications are due for merit-based forms of financial aid. Sometimes colleges will make that decision based on an admission application that you submit. And in other cases, a college may wait to decide on your merit-based aid because of a separate application. You'll want to pay real close attention to the different procedures that each college that you're considering follows, because some colleges will require additional documentation or perhaps an additional scholarship application to consider you for all forms of merit-based financial aid. Need-based financial aid, on the other hand, is very different than merit-based. Where merit-based is based on some type of accomplishment or achievement that you've done, need-based financial aid is instead based on a family's financial eligibility, or what's sometimes called financial need. This financial need is based on a standardized formula that is typically used when a student supplies information on a financial aid application. In a little while, we'll talk about the financial aid applications and how you can apply for financial aid. But for now, just know that by supplying information about yourself and your family's financial situation, income, assets, etc., that information will be used in a standardized formula to determine your family's financial need. If your financial need is high, you may be eligible for more need-based financial aid. If your family's financial need is determined to be relatively low, then you may be eligible for no or little need-based financial aid. Need-based financial aid often makes up some of the most attractive forms of financial aid, things such as grants, low-interest loans, no-interest loans, and work study. Some of these things are forms of financial aid that are also eligible to students because of the financial eligibility of their family. And they are they are usually subject to certain academic expectations. So if a student receives a form of need-based financial aid to attend college, it is very possible that the provider of that need-based financial aid may require the student to make progress on their degree, meaning complete the classes that they start, receive relatively good grades, and make progress towards the completion of a 2 or 4 year baccalaureate or associate's degree. If a student does not make that academic progress, it is possible that this need-based financial aid could stop or could not be renewed for subsequent years. So we've talked a little bit about the kinds of financial aid, where financial aid comes from, and the different types of financial aid that are out there. We're going to shift gears now, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the process of applying for that financial aid. Before we hop into that topic, I want to remind you that the Q&A function is available at the bottom or the side of your screen, depending on your Zoom setup. If you click that Q&A button, you can enter a question right in there. Julie is watching that Q&A and may answer the questions immediately for you. Or if it's a question that the whole group would benefit from, we may answer the questions at the end of the session. So please do use that Q&A question feature if you do have any questions tonight. So now let's talk about applying for financial aid. So the timetable for applying for financial aid is very important. The time in which a student applies for financial aid and completes their financial aid application can sometimes make them more or less eligible for financial aid. Each college has different deadlines that they use to determine financial aid eligibility. For instance, if you are applying to a college that is early action or early decision, it is common for those colleges to ask for admission applications and financial aid applications in the months of October or November to fully consider your student for different forms of financial aid. Normally, deadlines for financial aid that aren't related to early action or early decision are in February or March of a student's senior year, if they're attending college as a freshman next year, or if you're a transfer student in the year prior to when you want to apply for financial aid. Late applications can hurt a student's financial aid eligibility. And when I say late, I mean by a day. So it is important to watch those deadlines and adhere to them if there are deadlines for the colleges that you're considering. MEFA has a fantastic tool. It is free. It is available at the website that you see right on the screen, and it is an application manager. Applying for admission and applying for financial aid are complicated processes, especially if this is your family's first time going through the college selection and application processes. We encourage you to use this free tool, which just helps you keep organized. It helps you keep all of the information about the applications you've submitted, the other information that's due to your colleges, all in one place so that you can stay organized, stay on top of things, and make sure you meet those deadlines. Now we're going to talk about the different forms that are used to apply for financial aid. And I say forms because I've been in this industry for a long time. They're not actually forms anymore. They are online tools where students complete different applications for financial aid online to apply depending on which college they attend. The first financial aid application that we're going to talk about is the most popular one. It is the one that every student uses, no matter which college or university they are attending. And that application is the free application for federal student aid, better known as its acronym, FAFSA. FAFSA is required by all colleges and universities in the United States. This is how colleges and universities are eligible to award all federal financial aid, and in many states, there's state financial aid as well. This application is only available online. It's available only at FAFSA.gov, and it became available last month. So if you are looking to apply for financial aid for the next academic year, that is the academic year that begins in September of 2022, you'll complete the FAFSA anytime right now through the spring, meeting whatever deadlines your college may have. Again, some colleges will expect the FAFSA application to be completed by November, that's this month, and other colleges won't require that it's completed until February or March. But either way, the application is available to you right now, and you can access it at FAFSA.gov. FAFSA.gov does have a My Student Aid mobile app, which you're welcome to use. Again, I've been in this business for a little bit, and the application is not my personal favorite because it is certainly made for ease of transition, especially on mobile devices. However, the FAFSA on a desktop does allow you to see it a little more broadly, and depending on how you learn best and how you complete online forms best, you do have the option of the mobile app or the .gov website. In order to access the FAFSA, you do need login credentials. With FAFSA, the login credential is called an FSA ID. You see it right there in the middle of your screen, FSA ID. Every student that's going to apply for financial aid must have an FSA ID. It's like your username. Think of logging into your banking or your email. You have to have a username. For the FAFSA, the username is the FSA ID. FSA IDs are only available at the website in the middle of your screen, fsaid.ed.gov. You can go there right now if you don't have an FSA ID, and you can apply for one. You provide personal information about yourself. This is a time when you should feel comfortable providing personally identifiable information, because this website is a government website that is used to create the ID that's necessary to complete the FAFSA. If you are a student applying for financial aid, you will need an FSA ID for yourself. If you are a parent who has a student that's going to go to college, you too will need an FSA ID to help complete the FAFSA for your student. So both the student and the student's parent, if the student is a dependent student based on federal criteria, both the student and the parent will need an FSA ID. If the student has two parents, only one of those parents needs an FSA ID. The second parent does not. Instead, one parent may complete the FAFSA with the student as long as the student and the parent both have their own separate FSA ID. FSA IDs. The FAFSA does have a relatively new tool built into it. This tool allows you to pull information into your FAFSA from the Internal Revenue Service. This is a quick, easy way to pull information into your FAFSA, and we strongly encourage you to use it. You'll notice that you'll have the option to use the IRS data retrieval tool. If you don't use it, you have the prerogative to enter your information manually. However, that manual entry is a reason that you would be more likely to be selected for a process called verification. Verification is where the college is required to collect from you federal tax forms and other documents to verify the information that you provided on your FAFSA. If you use the IRS data retrieval tool, on the other hand, your likelihood for that lengthy process of verification is far less. And therefore, we strongly encourage everyone to use the IRS data retrieval tool when possible. There are a number of options to help with the FAFSA. We're going to talk about a number of them as we go through the presentation tonight. But right here on the screen, there's one option for you, the FAFSA webinar recordings, which are available at mefa.org/events. That's probably the same website that you signed up for this webinar at. And this FAFSA webinar recording is a great way to actually see the FAFSA and know how to use it before you actually get into the FAFSA itself. A quick note, FAFSAs are required every year that a student is enrolled in college, and one FAFSA is required for every student in college. So if a family does have two students in college at the same time, then that year that family will complete two FAFSAs, one for the first student and one for the second student. And again, FAFSAs are completed every year. So every year that a student is in a 4-year bachelor's degree program, that student will complete 4 separate FAFSAs, one each year. So what is the information on the FAFSA? Earlier, I told you that you should be prepared to provide personally identifiable information on the FAFSA, because this is a federal form that is used to make students eligible for most forms of financial aid, especially Title IV financial aid. So you will see that some of the information that's listed on this screen are pieces of information that you wouldn't normally give out otherwise, but you should be expected to give on the secure form, the FAFSA. First is citizenship status of the students. Students are typically required to be U.S. citizens or permanent residents of the United States to be eligible for some forms of financial aid. Hence the request for citizenship on the FAFSA. Non-citizens, especially non-citizen parents, should also complete the FAFSA, because a student may be eligible for financial aid despite their parent not being a citizen. If a parent, for instance, does not have a Social Security number, you'll notice that on the FAFSA, the Social Security number will be requested for both the student and the parent. And in the case of the parent, if the student does not have one, then the Social Security number should be entered as all zeros. Additionally, a parent without an FSA ID who doesn't have a Social Security number may sign the FAFSA manually by printing out a signature page, signing it, and sending it in. If you are a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, and your parent is a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, then you'll provide your Social Security information and your FSA ID information online and will not need to print out anything to sign. You'll also indicate on the FAFSA the colleges that you intend to apply to. Typically, the FAFSA allows you to list up to 10 colleges. So by filling out one application, your information goes to 10 different colleges all at the same time. In that way, it's similar to the Common App. If you use the Common App to apply to multiple colleges for admission, the FAFSA is the common financial aid application for multiple colleges. It can be sent to each one that you list on the FAFSA up to a total of 10. Each one of your colleges will then receive that information, and then you begin to communicate with each one of those colleges, up to 10 again, on any additional information or questions that they may have or need. Information that also goes on the FAFSA is information about the student's parent or parents. In the case of two parents, parents who are married must both provide their information on the FAFSA. That includes different sex parents as well as same-sex parents. Additionally, all parents who live together must provide information. So whether these are biological or adoptive parents, if those parents live together, married or not married, both parents provide their information, whether they are a same-sex couple or a different sex couple. In the case of divorced or separated parents, the custodial parent and the custodial parent's current spouse are the ones that provide information on the FAFSA. In this case, in specifically the case of financial aid, custodial parent is defined as the parent with whom the student lives with more than 50% of the time. If the student lives with one parent 75% of the time and another parent 25% of the time, the parent with whom the student lives 75% of the time is the parent whose information goes on the FAFSA. Additionally, that parent with whom the student lives with 75% of the time, if they have a spouse, a different spouse, a new spouse, then that spouse's information goes on the FAFSA, and the non-custodial parent, or the parent with whom the student lives with 25% of the time, is not included on the FAFSA. Legal guardians are not considered parents for the purposes of financial aid. Adoptive parents, biological parents are parents, but legal guardians are not. If a student is of dependent age and does not have a biological or adoptive parent, and instead is providing information for themselves and only has a legal guardian, the legal guardian's information is not included on the FAFSA. Additionally, the FAFSA will be asking information such as the number of people that live in your household. This includes parents, the student, siblings, and any other individual with whom a dependent student's parent provides more than 50% of their support. Additionally, it will ask for the number of students that are in college. This is specifically regarding children in the family, not the parent. If the parent is in college, the parent will complete his or her own FAFSA, whereas a parent that has children in college, only the children, including the student and the student's siblings, will be counted on the student's FAFSA in the number of students in college. Additional information on the FAFSA certainly includes financial information. Income information about both the parent and the student is provided on the FAFSA. This includes information such as adjusted gross income, wages, taxes paid, and more. Additionally, taxed and untaxed information is provided on the FAFSA. So if a student or a student's parent is receiving untaxed income, perhaps tips or other forms of untaxed income, that untaxed income also is provided on the FAFSA. A note here for students who are applying for financial aid for the 22-23 academic year, that's the academic year that begins next September, the information that's provided on the FAFSA is from the 2020 calendar year. So this information can come right off of your 2020 income taxes or be pulled directly from the IRS using that IRS data retrieval tool, again, from your 2020 taxes. Additionally, asset information is provided on the FAFSA. For traditional age students, often students don't have a great deal of assets, but sometimes some students do. In other cases, parents sometimes have assets. This can include the balance of savings, the balance in checking accounts, the balance of investments or properties that are not the primary home. It can include the balance of 529 accounts, which are college savings accounts. But there are some forms of assets that the FAFSA is not interested in and should not be provided on the FAFSA. And you see those listed on the screen here. Students that are completing the FAFSA should not provide any information about the value of the family's primary home. So the home where you spend most of your time is where your primary home, and the value of that home is not considered an asset for financial aid purposes. However, if your family has a second home or a rental home, then that home would be considered an asset, and the net value of that asset goes on the FAFSA. Additionally, the value of retirement plans, life insurance plans, and the value of some small family businesses are not provided on the FAFSA as assets. Additionally, and this is an important one that many families ask about, debt is not reported on the FAFSA, except debt reported on assets. So earlier, when I said that the net value of a property would be included on the FAFSA, that's the assessed value minus any liens or mortgages against that property is that net value. That net value is included on the FAFSA. But other debts are not. So car loans, credit card loans, healthcare bills, those forms of debt are not included on the FAFSA. Let's shift gears now. We're going to talk about a different financial aid application. We've just spent a few minutes talking about the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. As a reminder, I'll mention that the FAFSA is used by all students at all colleges. The CSS Profile, on the other hand, is only used by some colleges. Information about the CSS Profile is also available online. You see the website at the top of the screen, cssprofile.org. And at that website, not only can you access the CSS Profile to complete it, but you can also see a list of the colleges and universities that require the CSS Profile. I will urge you to also verify the requirement of a CSS Profile with your colleges, where I hope that the cssprofile.org website is correct and that all of the colleges are listed there. I would hate for you to miss a deadline by not confirming. And so I do strongly urge you to check with all of the colleges and universities that you're thinking about attending to see if they require the CSS Profile. The CSS Profile does become available on October 1st, just like the FAFSA. And like the FAFSA, the CSS Profile is going to ask for a lot of the same information: income information, asset information, information about the size of your household, and more. Why would a college ask for a CSS Profile when I said earlier that all colleges require FAFSAs? Why would a college want both? Well, in some cases, the CSS Profile provides enough additional information for a college or university to provide additional forms of financial aid. You might find this more commonly at private institutions, where a private college or university is looking to give away financial aid from that college or university and just needs this additional piece of information from the CSS Profile to make sure that you're eligible to receive additional financial aid. One of the big differences between the FAFSA and the CSS Profile is that the CSS Profile does require information from non-custodial parents. That is provided on what's called a profile. It's a separate form or a separate page of the CSS Profile that allows the non-custodial parent and the non-custodial parent spouse to provide information about their support of the student, even though they are not living with the student more than 50% of the time. Just like with the FAFSA, the MEFA does have a webinar recording at that same website, mefa.org/events, where you can see the CSS Profile up close and personal. You can see it being completed, and you can be as informed as possible before you begin entering information on the CSS Profile at cssprofile.org. The last type of financial aid application that we'll talk about is an institution-specific form of application, These applications are specifically from individual colleges. So if you are attending West Virginia State University, West Virginia State University may have their own financial aid application, just specific to that college, and if one of your colleges does have a financial aid application specific to their institution. They will ask you to complete that, and you will also have a deadline by which you'll need to complete that, just like the CSS Profile or the FAFSA. So, okay, now we have applied for financial aid. Depending on what your college wants, you've submitted the FAFSA, because every college requires the FAFSA. Maybe you've submitted a CSS Profile, depending on whether or not your college wants it. And maybe you've even submitted a college-specific financial aid application. But now they've all been submitted. Now it's December or January or February of the year before you go to college, and all your financial aid applications are in. So what happens now? Well, in the case of the CSS Profile and the FAFSA, your colleges are going to receive that information electronically. That does not happen immediately. Matter of fact, it doesn't even come close to happening immediately. In many cases, a student will complete a FAFSA, and the college or university will not receive it for multiple days, and depending on the season, sometimes multiple weeks. So it is possible that you could submit the financial aid application online at fafsa.gov, click submit, all done, close the browser, and your college will not actually receive it for another 3 days, 5 days, or even more. But when you when you complete your FAFSA and your college receives its information electronically, you will receive back a student aid report in the case of the FAFSA, which will be sent to you either electronically or via postmail, where you can see the information that you provided on the FAFSA. If you see that information and you notice an error, you can go right back into fafsa.gov, log in with that same FSA ID, go right back into your FAFSA, make a correction to any item that you need to, and send that to your college or university. Now, you don't want to do that often. You want to do that if you've made an error, of course, or if your college or university asks you to make a change to something. For instance, an item might have been left completely blank, and in order for your FAFSA to be processed, information must be provided in that field. So your college or university may ask you to go back into your FAFSA, make an addition or make a correction, and resubmit your FAFSA. If you have any aspect of your life or your family's life that has changed significantly since 2020, that's what colleges and universities typically refer to as financial aid special circumstances. As I said earlier, on the FAFSA, you'll be providing information from the calendar year 2020. 2020 was a year that was rocked by the first wave of the pandemic. It was certainly a time when unemployment rates went up, when incomes went down, when employment stability was concerning. And so there could have been significant changes in the income or assets, perhaps, that your family has. So when you report your information on the FAFSA, you're reporting accurately the information from 2020. But now in 2021, you may know that your family's income has significantly decreased by 50 or 60%. If you have a special circumstance like that, you want to be sure to contact each and every one of the colleges or universities that you are considering attending after you submit your financial aid applications. You'll submit your applications with accurate information from 2020, and then you'll want to call or write your college financial aid offices to make sure that they understand how those special circumstances have affected your family. Additionally, I mentioned that verification is possible. Verification is where additional information is required from the family to verify the information that was provided on the FAFSA. It's kind of like an audit, but not for the IRS, it's for financial aid. It's very often complicated, is very often including multiple documents, and it's something that most families want to avoid. Excuse me. But you will want to make sure that you respond to any questions for verification, requests for verification documents, so that your colleges are able to review your financial aid applications with complete information as early as possible. Verification. Colleges normally do verify information for a small percentage of applicants. So many applicants for financial aid will not necessarily be selected for verification, but for the percentage that do, this is a process that, again, you want to follow very closely. You do want to comply with all requests. You may be asked for a copy of your tax return or for various forms to be completed, and you'll want to make sure that you are providing that information as timely as possible. If your college offers a portal for communications, meaning a place that you log into at UMass Amherst to see what your status is, or at Nichols College to see what your status is. There you may be able to track some of the information that you're providing to complete your verification requirements. Your financial aid office is available at each one of your colleges and universities. Each of those colleges and universities have staff that have been hired that are solely dedicated to helping you understand financial aid and helping you know how to make a college education affordable. So you can see, for instance, here we've suggested that you do learn about financial aid from your financial aid office. They're available to help you learn about the forms of financial aid we've talked about tonight. They are certainly the office that you want to approach with any changes, any special circumstances. How can things change? You've heard of families appealing their financial aid offer. This happens typically based on a change in circumstance, and you would do so directly with the financial aid office. And then you see here how to contact them. Financial aid offices are very available. They want to talk to you because every college knows that financing plays a very large part in most students' decisions on whether or not to attend college and persist in college. So whether you like to reach out by email or phone, the financial aid office is waiting to speak to you. They want you to reach out to gain access. And in some cases, some financial aid offices do offer an online chat. So now let's talk about how those financial aid offices make those financial aid decisions. You've applied for financial aid. You've provided lots of information. If you've been selected for verification, you've provided documents to verify everything. The financial aid office has a lot of information about you now. How do they decide whether your student receives more or less financial aid? Well, let's walk through that. The first thing to know is a sort of a vocabulary phrase. And that phrase is at the top of the screen. It's cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is a term that if any of us were asked on the street, what do you think a college cost of attendance is? I bet 80 or 90% of us would say it's the bill that you receive. Well, when you attend college, you do receive a bill. The bill is a charge, the college charging you to attend. They're going to charge you tuition and fees. This is forms of charges that are required just to attend the classes. And if you decide to live on campus, you may want to live there in a dormitory or residence hall room and perhaps eat food in the dining hall, which is typically called board. So that bill, if you're a resident student, will include the charge for tuition and fees, as well as the charge for room and your meal plan or your room and board. So the blue boxes that you see on the screen here are your charged expenses. They're billed direct expenses. Those are the things that the college will send you a bill for. However, cost of attendance is much more than just the direct cost that the college charges you. The cost of attendance is the total expenses for 1 year of college, including tuition, fees, room and board, the books or the supplies that are necessary to be successful in your classes, an average cost for students to transport themselves to and from the college, and a small allocation for personal expenses. So if a college, these are forms of costs that are not billed per se. No college is going to bill you for transportation or bill you for your personal effects. However, all of these are rolled into a total cost of attendance to attend a college, which is later used to calculate your financial aid eligibility. So cost of attendance is a big piece of the financial aid puzzle. The second vocabulary term or phrase to know is expected family contribution. This is by far the term with the worst label, the worst name possible. Because again, if any of us were asked on the street of when it comes to college, what do you think expected family contribution means? I bet 80 or 90% of us would say the amount that you pay. Well, expected family contribution is the amount that the family is expected to absorb for 1 year of college. However, it's not the same thing as the amount that's paid out of pocket. For instance, when the EFC or expected family contribution is calculated, it's calculated based on the information that is provided on the financial aid applications. You'll remember earlier that we talked about providing income and asset, household size, and children in college on the FAFSA. All of that information is put into a standardized formula, and out comes a relative expected family contribution, or an EFC. The EFC is used to calculate financial aid eligibility. The Pell Grant, for instance, which I said earlier is offered by the federal government, is tied directly to the expected family contribution. Other forms of financial aid are more loosely but still tied to the EFC. The family is primarily responsible for paying the cost of the expected family contribution. However, as I said, it's not necessarily the amount that you will pay, because instead the EFC is a tool that is used in a formula to calculate financial aid eligibility. Now, before you actually fill out your FAFSA, if you'd like to know what your EFC might be for your family or for your student, you've got a couple of resources right there on the bottom of the screen. These are free. One is available from MEFA. The other is available directly from the federal government. The EFC calculators are at mefa.org or ifap.ed.gov, where you can supply some information about your family and get an estimate of what your expected family contribution might be. So again, we've learned about cost of attendance and expected family contribution. Now let's put those together to help figure out your financial aid eligibility. This is the secret sauce. This is the man behind the curtain. This is how financial aid decisions for need-based financial aid are made. First, we take the cost of attendance. The cost of attendance, room, board, tuition, fees, books, supplies, transportation, and all. We put that cost of attendance together. We subtract from that cost of attendance the expected family contribution, which leaves us with the family's financial aid eligibility or financial need. Colleges and universities then take that financial need or that financial aid eligibility and try to fill it up with financial aid from many different sources to make the college education affordable for you. Let's see how that works. First, we have on the screen here a college that has a cost of attendance of $45,000. Now, the amount of tuition and fees and room and board for this campus might be $38,000. But the cost of attendance, keep in mind, includes non-direct charge costs of attending college, and that's what brings this college's cost of attendance up to $4,500. So this green cylinder represents a total of $45,000 for the total cost of attendance. Now we subtract from the cost of attendance the family's contribution. You remember this formula right here: cost of attendance minus expected family contribution equals financial aid. So let's take the college's cost of attendance, $45,000, and subtract this family's expected family contribution. You see it at the bottom of the screen, $5,000. So when we subtract $5,000 from the cost of attendance of $45,000, that leaves a financial need for this student of $40,000. So this college could offer this student up to $40,000 in need-based financial aid. So let's see what they offered. Well, first they offered the red bar, which offers a large grant and a large scholarship. These forms of financial aid do not need to be repaid back, and they are likely a need-based form of financial aid where this student, they could be need-based or merit-based, but they take up some of that eligibility for financial aid by offering $27,500 in free money to help pay that student's bill. Next, this student must be a freshman because they're eligible for the freshman level of the federal direct student loan for $5,500. Next, the college has offered this student a work study award. Work study, remember, is the form of financial aid that allows a student to work on campus and receive a paycheck. And then there's an unmet need portion. This is where the college ran out of financial aid, for lack of a better term. They offered all the financial aid that they possibly could to this student, but there was a gap. There was an unmet need portion where $5,000 of the student's financial need was not covered. So now we know that we have $27,500 worth of grants and scholarships. We have $5,500 of student loans. You put those together and you've got over $30,000 in financial aid that will be applied directly to the student's bill. If that student's bill is less than $30,000, then they will have all of their costs covered. If this college's bill is more than $30,000, which is probably pretty likely, there could be a gap that is left over after the financial aid that would be left to pay. This could be paid out of pocket or with another loan or with a payment plan that we'll talk a little bit more about in just a few moments. But there is the possibility that after receiving all of this financial aid, the student in this scenario could have a gap remaining. Now, net price calculators do exist on all of the college's websites. It's a requirement of the federal government. So whatever college or university you're looking at, you can go onto that college's website right now and search for net price calculator. The college is responsible for providing a tool for you online that gives you the ability to put in some basic information about yourself, your finances, perhaps even your academics, and then it will help you calculate what the approximate estimated net price for that college will be. It will display some forms of financial aid from both the federal government and state governments, maybe some institutional financial aid, maybe some merit or need-based financial aid, but it will give you a rough idea of the expected net price of that campus. Again, this is available on all college and university websites right now, and you can go check it out before or after you apply for financial aid. Just a tool to help you understand where you might fall with financial aid at each college. So now let's look at some scenarios, okay? You're probably, if you're thinking about going to college next year, or your student is, you're probably looking at multiple colleges. Here on this colorful chart, we've got 3 colleges: College A, College B, and College C. In each one of these cases, all 3 colleges have a cost of attendance of $45,000. So that means that each one of the colleges cost approximately the same. Because this family's expected family contribution is $5,000, and the EFC never changes, no matter what college you're going to, you still have, and this family still has a $5,000 EFC. The total eligibility for financial aid at all 3 of these colleges is $40,000. So let's see how each college did in putting together a financial aid package. Well, College A really appears to have knocked it out of the park. They're offering this student $32,500 in grants or scholarships. They're offering a $5,500 loan and a $2,000 work study award. That means that this College A could only offer the student a maximum of $40,000 in need-based financial aid, and they offered $40,000 in need-based financial aid. They offered the most they possibly could. College B, that looks like they tried hard, but when you get down to the green bar at the bottom, they offered about $7,000 less in financial aid than College A did. That means that College B is likely going to be $7,000 more expensive than College A, even though those 2 colleges are the exact same price. And College C, well, College C didn't try too hard. College C offered a smaller grant, a student loan, and a work study award totaling $25,000 worth of financial aid, leaving a big gap for this family of $15,000. Now, which college has your student fallen in love with? I really hope it's College A, but if it is College C, as we go through the rest of the presentation, we'll talk about how to even make College C affordable. Let's look at the scenario from a different perspective. In this case, again, College A, B, and C all cost the same. They all cost $45,000. Each college, the EFC does not change. It's always $5,000, which means for each college, A, B, and C, we have a total eligibility, a total possible financial aid award of $40,000. Well, if we look all the way down here at the bottom in this green bar, we can see that each one of the colleges came out just about the same. Each college offered $35,000 worth of financial aid, leaving only a small $5,000 gap. That's good news. However, when we look a little bit closer, College A offered a lot of scholarships and a little bit of loan and a little bit of work study. College C, on the other hand, offered no scholarships or grants, a small student loan, and a large parent loan. This is where the college has taken it upon themselves to assume that this family will pay for College C using borrowing that's happening with the parent or parents. Now, in some families, parental borrowing makes perfect sense. There is a program through the federal government called the Parent Plus Loan, which is a very common parent loan to help parents help their students pay for school. Additionally, many other lenders offer loans to parents to help pay for college. MEFA, for instance, is involved in parent lending and is an option for all families to help pay for college. In this case, this college, College C, has gone so far as to assume that the parents will use that parent loan. Parents always have the option to borrow to help their students pay for education, but in order for College C to be affordable, that parent now will have to borrow. Whereas with College A, no parental borrowing is assumed, and in College B, a small amount is. The moral of the story is here, when you receive those financial aid awards, which you will receive from all the colleges that you apply to, you're going to need to spread those out on the kitchen table. Take a look at them. Look closely at what kinds of financial aid are available. Make sure that it really is in your best interest. Make sure that it's affordable for your family. And make it be part of the decision-making process on where your student is going to go to college. Now, students don't always go to college based on which one is the most affordable. Students fall in love with colleges for all kinds of reasons. The academic profile, the extracurricular experiences, where the friend or girlfriend or boyfriend from school is going. But financing is a big piece of many families' decisions. And this is where not only is the amount that a college is offering you important, but also the types of financial aid are very important. So now I did say that we were going to talk a little bit about what happens when you have that gap. We're certainly going to seek as much financial aid eligibility as possible for you. But if after financial aid you do have that gap, you have an amount that's left to pay, what do we do about that? Well, there's a number of different options. In the scenario that you see here on the screen, this family in the blue bar has a balance due to their college of $20,000. So how are they going to pay off that $20,000 in order for that student to attend school? Well, the options are to use past income, present income, or future income. Let's start with past income. If a student or a family has savings, a 529 plan, or other savings that they want to liquidate and use for college education, there's an option to do so. If you have a U plan or a U fund, if you have a 529 through Fidelity or through MEFA, then you want to go ahead and use that for the payment of college in the present day, using, of course, that past income or that past savings. Present income that the family is absorbing right now, can be used to pay down the cost of an education through a direct payment to the college or the use of a payment plan. Most colleges or universities will offer payment plans for remaining balances. For instance, in this case where the family owes $20,000, if the family wanted to place all of that on a payment plan, the college might break up those payments over 5 or 10 months. And of course, the balance due during each one of those months would be based on the division of the balance due by the number of months being paid on that payment plan. Most colleges offer payment plans with very small entry fees. Sometimes you might have to pay $25 or $50 to enter the plan. In some rare cases, there's interest charged on the payments, but that's relatively rare. It's more common for campuses to offer straight payment plans with limited barriers for access. And then the last form of income that can be used to help pay remaining balance is future income. And this is where families are borrowing additional student loans. In some cases, it can be the student borrowing a student loan. In other cases, a parent. And in some cases, a third party, such as a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle or a neighbor might borrow on behalf of the student. In a case of an educational loan, many parents typically qualify for educational loans on their own because they do have the credit worthiness, perhaps the assets, the collateral to borrow a loan. Students, on the other hand, as I said earlier, have a hard time qualifying for loans that do not come from the Federal Direct Loan Program. The Federal Direct Loan Program is the program that allows students to be eligible for the loan simply by being a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, and attending a U.S. college or university. But when a student goes out on the free market and tries to find a loan to pay for college, whether they go to Chase Bank or Wells Fargo or Sallie Mae, there may be a credit consideration, there may be a debt to income ratio considered, and many times 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old students don't have the credit worthiness to borrow those additional loans. However, in some families, the decision for borrowing does come down to whether the student does come down to the student borrowing. In this case, a student will typically need a co-borrower. This is someone of good credit worthiness who can apply with the student as a co-borrower. Typically, this person is not required to pay back that loan, except for in the case where the student cannot be payment from the student cannot be secured. In most cases, the student is the primary borrower, and the co-borrower is used for their credit worthiness. This is where educational loans come in. So in the scenario on the screen where this family had a $20,000 balance, they paid off $5,000 with past income and savings. $5,000 went on a payment plan with their current income, and $10,000 was paid down with an educational loan to result in a zero balance, allowing the student to attend that college without concern. Now, there are some very, very important things that families should be talking about, especially in November, December, especially if your student is a senior. If your student is a junior or a sophomore, even better. These conversations can take place as early as, in my opinion, junior year. In some cases, if your student is ready for the conversation, as early as sophomore year. But certainly by senior year, you want to have a real meaningful conversation about what is affordable for your family. Can your family absorb a $20,000 balance like we just saw on the last screen? Would starting at a community college provide significant savings? Generally, community colleges are less costly than almost all other colleges and universities, and community college credits transfer to almost all institutions, especially public institutions such as UMass Amherst, UMass Lowell, and the state universities like Bridgewater, Salem, and Worcester. Those credits will transfer from community colleges, which means that students have a savings from attending their first 1 or 2 years at the community college and then transferring to their four-year higher cost institution. Other questions to concern yourself with, and especially having with your senior, is who is going to do the borrowing? In almost all students' cases, borrowing is a part of making a college education affordable. Who will be doing that borrowing? Does the parent or parents have the credit worthiness to even be considered for a student loan or an educational loan, I mean? Can the student absorb a significant amount of debt? What type of career will your student be going into? If they're going into a high-paying career, a typically high-paying career, perhaps a slightly additional amount of debt is worth it for that investment. If your family is if your student is going into a career that is traditionally a lower income, then you'll want to keep your indebtedness very low so as to not saddle that person with a significant amount of debt after graduation. Want to think about graduate school. If your student is planning to go straight from their bachelor's degree into the workforce, then the borrowing would stop there. But if your student needs a master's degree to succeed in their field, such as education, where master's degrees are required for teachers in Massachusetts, do you want to, again, increase your borrowing in your baccalaureate degree, or do you want to save any borrowing that may be necessary for your master's degree? These important questions are hard for a 17 and 18-year-old student to hear. They are sometimes not comfortable conversations because conversations begin to stray into what's affordable or the financial stability of the family. These are conversations that are very hard for a family to have, some families to have. However, these conversations are much easier in November or December of a senior year than they are in March, April, or May of a senior year. Because by March, April, or May of a senior year, those acceptance letters have started to roll in. The student has started to receive pennants in the mail from their favorite college. Maybe they got a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. Maybe they went to an event and fell in love with the student union or someone that they met there. By the time that happens, if the conversation has to boil down to what's affordable, the conversation is far more difficult at the end of senior year than it is at the beginning of senior year. So we do encourage you to ask some of these questions over the kitchen table or driving to practice or on your way to the next event. Just pop through a couple of these questions now to save yourself the difficulty of having them later on. So there are a number of options, especially in Massachusetts, to decrease the cost of an overall education. We talked already about the community colleges. The community colleges are part of a program in Massachusetts called Mass Transfer. Mass Transfer is a program that guarantees that students that take certain courses at a community college and complete an associate's degree have guaranteed acceptance, guaranteed discounts, and guaranteed transfer of credits to four-year public colleges and universities. So a student seeking to go to Westfield State or Fitchburg State or Salem State University can attend their local community college, and with the completion of associate's degree, can be guaranteed the transfer of all of those credits, receive a discount when they get to the state university, and have the lower overall cost of attending a community college for the first 2 years. All of the information about Mass Transfer can be seen at the website right there on your screen, mass.edu/Mass Transfer. Additionally, in New England, we have a program called Tuition Break. Tuition Break is a program that helps students attend out-of-state institutions at lower costs. If, for instance, you are interested in a program in you are interested in an academic program that is not offered in the state of Massachusetts, you can sometimes get to that program in another state for lower than their out-of-state costs. This is an important distinction for state universities, where in Massachusetts, your costs are going to be relatively low for attending a public institution, but in New Hampshire or Connecticut, your costs would be much higher because you'll be paying out-of-state tuition. The Tuition Break program does give you a break on that tuition by providing you a discount for certain academic programs. You see the website right there, nebi.org, and the long URL at the bottom of your screen if you want to make your way right over to the Tuition Break program to learn more about that. A few more free resources for you. FAFSA Day is a statewide effort in Massachusetts to help students and families complete the FAFSA. These are free programs that are provided all the time from October all the way through February. And they used to be, prior to the pandemic, they were provided in person, where you and a financial aid professional would be in the same room completing the FAFSA on a computer. These days, many of these programs are being offered virtually. So you can get more information about the in-person and virtual programs at fafsaday.org. You see that URL in the middle of your screen, fafsaday.org. Educational Opportunity Centers are federally funded storefronts, for lack of a better term. They're offices where you can physically go to receive free financial aid help. In Massachusetts, almost all of the Educational Opportunity Centers are run by an organization called the Massachusetts Education and Career Opportunities Incorporated. This is MassEdCo. Full disclosure, I am on the board of MassEdCo, so I have an affinity for it. But this is an organization that provides free financial aid, one-on-one or small group help, where you can make an appointment with an educational opportunity counselor, and either through Zoom or in person, be paired up with that counselor to receive one-on-one or small group help with your FAFSA. They'll actually log into the FAFSA with you, help answer any questions, make sure everything is correct before your FAFSA is submitted. Again, this is an absolutely free resource that is available, and you can find out more about MassEdCo and the Educational Opportunity Centers at massedco.org. Throughout the senior year is a very complicated and time-bound year for many reasons. There's lots going on. There's dances, there's projects, there's academics, there's many things happening, the last year of athletics perhaps, and you're trying to make your way towards college. So you've got a lot going on in especially senior year, where senior year you may be taking standardized tests. Although SATs and ACTs are becoming far less popular, many colleges still do require them. So you want to make sure that you might be required to take them. You're completing college essays, gathering recommendations. Perhaps you're attending a MEFA college financing seminar and completing your admission and financial aid applications. Now really is a great time to be filling out your FAFSA and your CSS profile if your college requires it. You're not late if you haven't done so, but November and December is a great time for most campuses to receive FAFSAs, especially if your student is considering early action or early decision. In the summer, The submission of applications concludes. That's when most students submit their final admission applications and financial aid applications if you haven't done so already. Perhaps you're applying for some of those scholarships that we had at mefapathways.org or fastweb.com. You're sending in your grade reports, you're sending in your transcripts to your colleges. And then when we get over the hump, when we get past the winter and we're into the spring, that's when you're going to start to receive those acceptance offers. Congratulations, you're accepted to X college, and then you receive your financial aid award. Congratulations, we're happy to offer you this financial aid to come to our college. MEFA does offer another session called After the College Acceptance. This program is one where MEFA brings in volunteer financial aid experts to help you look over your acceptance letters and your financial aid award letters to make sure you understand what's being offered. Earlier, we showed an example of college A, B, and C, and how each one of them offered different forms of financial aid to the same student. If that happens to you, you'll want to make sure you understand what those different forms of financial aid are and what they mean, whether or not they're renewable, and our volunteer staff can help you do that at the After the College Acceptance Seminar. That's also a good time to attend those final, it says open houses on the screen. In some cases, they're yield programs that are available for you to see the college one last time in March or April before you ultimately make your decision about which college to attend by the National Candidates reply date of May 1st. So right now you have attended most of the college financing seminar. After tonight, if you haven't done so already, the next step as far as financial aid goes is making sure you get that FAFSA username. That FAFSA username is called an FSA ID. And just a reminder, one is needed for the student. And if the student is dependent upon a parent or parents, then one FSA ID is required for a parent as well. Now is also the time to get your deadlines and applications organized. Remember, MEFA does offer the college application tool where you can organize your information about not only your admission applications, but also your financial aid applications and the documents that you're submitting to support those applications. Please consider using that MEFA college application tool to keep yourself organized around your apps and your deadlines. We do have a number of other events coming up through MEFA. You can see all of those at mefa.org/events, including the After the Acceptance seminar that we just talked about a moment ago, and additional financial aid information sessions. And you see a lot of other resources for you right there at mefa.org. MEFA is available to connect with you not only through email, but also through many different forms of social media. You see those represented here. Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook are all great ways to connect with MEFA. Stay informed and make sure you get that timely information from your state's Education Finance Authority. This is the end of our college financing session for this evening. You see contact information right there on your screen for MEFA. MEFA is an organization that is dedicated to the success of students in all forms of their education in Massachusetts. They are your educational finance authority, so we do want you to lean heavily on them because they're a great resource and not affiliated with any college or university. You have the opportunity to ask the questions that you want answered without worrying whether or not it will affect your financial aid or your admission. Ask the questions of MEFA. Make sure you get those questions answered from a trusted source. Phone number and email right there on the screen for you anytime. Julie, did we have any questions pop up over the last few minutes?
Yes, we did. Thank you, Ryan. There were a number of questions that I was able to answer, but I saved a few tough ones, no, a few good ones for you. So we'll just answer a few now. And if anyone has any last questions, you can continue to put it into the question and answer section. So there are just a couple asking on the topic of merit aid. So one person just asked, do I need to file a FAFSA for merit aid? And then the other person wanted to know if merit-based scholarship applications are typically due at the same time as need-based. So I thought maybe you could just speak to that a little bit again.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So merit-based financial aid, again, is typically based on some type of characteristic that's not necessarily need. However, it is not that uncommon for different forms of financial aid to take into account both merit and need. So in the case of, for instance, a scholarship that might be offered from the college that you are thinking about attending. The scholarship might be $1,000 if you have some financial need that needs to be addressed. But it might be $3,000 if you have both financial need that needs to be addressed and a very high GPA. And that's why we always encourage students to complete all of the admission, scholarship, and financial aid applications as early as possible so that you can be considered no matter what the algorithm is at the college you're interested in figuring that out. Now, being November, for most of you probably of your student's senior year, now is a great time to be applying for admission, applying for financial aid, and if your college or university has a separate scholarship financial aid application, now is likely a good time to complete that as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the exact same time or the same day or same weekend, but it is a good idea to have a lot of that information into your colleges relatively early and around the same time.
Thank you. That's great. And also, one parent asked about linking the parent and the student information. So, does the student complete the FAFSA first and the parent? And I don't know if you want to just say a few words about that.
Oh, good. Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
So the FAFSA that is being completed belongs to the student. It is the student's FAFSA. So I think the very first question is, what is your name, right? Your name is John Student. It is not the parent's FAFSA. However, in order for the student to complete his or her FAFSA, they must provide the parent's information. Now, most students don't know the adjusted gross income of their parents or the amount of taxes they paid in 2020. So it's common for traditional age students to work with their parents on the computer at the same time to provide all of the information from the family necessary for the student to receive the most consideration. Again, it's the student's FAFSA, but the parent and student's information goes on it, and the parent and student both provide their FSA ID when completing the FAFSA. Additionally, both the parent and the student have the potential to draw their information in from the IRS using that IRS data retrieval tool. But typically, most families work together to complete the FAFSA at one time so that the student can receive that maximum level of consideration.
And I have one more. Why are the federal loan limits so low given such high college costs?
Yeah. If any of us had the answer to that one. So the federal loan limits are exactly what they sound like. They are the maximum amount that a student can borrow if they are a dependent student. They are $5,500 for a freshman student, and they go up by small increments after that. If you are attending a community college, that loan covers a huge portion of the annual cost of attending a community college. If you're attending an expensive, more expensive private institution, then a $5,500 loan doesn't come too close to covering most of the cost. There is the possibility of those loan amounts going up. In the past, the freshman loan used to be $3,500 for the year, for instance. Now it's gone up to $5,500. It is possible that in future years, those maximum loan tiers could go up. And additionally, for students in different circumstances, such as a student that is independent from their parents, perhaps their parents have passed away or are otherwise unavailable and incarcerated, et cetera. Students who have parents or that are not in the picture have the potential to be classified as independent students, which gives them the automatic eligibility to increase that loan. It doesn't increase it exponentially, but it increases it somewhat to where the student can borrow a little bit more to help make that affordable. On parent loans, on the other hand, the federal government has much higher maximum amounts. And so a parent can borrow a great deal more in a Parent Plus loan, but those student loans are kept low. It is possible that you can make an argument that they are being kept low to keep the indebtedness of students to a minimum. A student leaving college, having borrowed the maximum amount of all those loans, could be leaving with $25,000 or $30,000 worth of debt. That's a lot of debt. We certainly see the point that students do need to borrow in many cases more to make a college education affordable. It just doesn't happen through the federal program.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much. And we have a few thank yous here. People are very appreciative of all of the information you shared. And I am as well. Thank you to everyone as well.
Thank you all for attending, and thanks, Julie, for hosting.
You're welcome. Everyone have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks.